Welcome to this AI for Authors workshop. And specifically, we will cover how you can use AI as an assistant in your writing process of your book. And I know I have been trying to write a book for the longest time, and I've always kind of procrastinated on it. And with AI, it's a lot easier. And I would not use it in the traditional way that you're using ChatGPT for everything. I think that's where a lot of people get it a little bit wrong, because then the book is not going to sound anything like you, and it's going to be pretty bad, to be honest. But I have Jan with me here because he actually did this in the early days of AI, which I find really interesting. He used Jasper back then, and I'm sure you can tell everyone a little bit more about the process and how it was. And you had a little bit help, because I know it was for Virtual Summit Mastery when you were running it for a little bit. And yeah, I had a lot of content, and that helped you, of course, with this process. But I'm sure we can go into the history a little bit, and then we go into the actionable steps for people to follow to actually get a book out there with the help of AI.
Yeah, I think the most important takeaway right here is that I was leveraging the material you already created for Virtual Summit Mastery when you founded it and developed the program to the level it is. And I think what I want to make clear in this session is that AI is an amplifier, AI is an assistant. AI should not be the source of knowledge for your book. And when I wrote Virtual Summit Mastery Method, essentially what I did is I took the process that you created for VSM and I turned that into a book, and I expanded on the individual steps using Jasper AI. And now we would do this probably with ChatGPT or Perplexity. That's what we'll show in the session at least. But it is really about enhancing what you know and making that better and putting that into a format, into a story arc, structuring it into chapters that make sense and formatting that as a book. It's not about using AI knowledge to write a book and then slapping your name on top of it.
100%. And something very important when it comes to the legal aspects of this, and I'm sure Peter Nevesi would like that I mentioned this here, because you cannot really own the copyright if most of the work is created by a robot, aka the AI. You can't own it. So if you use AI to kind of help you with the writing process, that's still a fine line. Depends how much is generated by AI and how much is generated by you. If you, for example, record your book, we're going to talk about that, you can actually record it. That's how I would do it. I would be interviewed. And for each step in my process, I have 7 steps in my Virtual Summit process, for example. Then I would be interviewed for each step, and then I would put that into a book form. Would I use AI for all this? I would probably use Grammarly quite a bit too. That's for sure one tool. And I would use that to actually expand upon things. And probably when you see this here, you see this Amazon page for the book. It's probably one of the last times you see this, because we kept this up intentionally so we could record this session, actually show you an example how we've actually used AI. And this book was really well received. But Jan is not focused on this anymore, obviously, since I have now VSM and he's focused on his SaaS. So we're going to take this down, and maybe in the future I will publish a new book on the new process, because a lot has changed too. So we don't want to cause any confusion. But for this example, it's really beneficial to just have this here, because it was actually with the help of AI as an assistant. That was in the early days of Jasper. Jan did this.
With this tool right here, Jasper.ai.
Yeah, we will not use this today, but it's still a useful tool. Don't get me wrong, it's a great tool, but I think there's other tools and also a little bit more affordable solutions you can use in the process that will get you maybe even a better result.
Yeah, I agree. And you mentioned something quite interesting, and that was being interviewed for a book. I feel when it comes to writing books, one of the biggest challenges, at least for me when I was writing Virtual Summit Mastery Method, is to put the knowledge that I had into a structure that makes sense for a book. Because the way it makes sense for me in my mind might not be the way it makes sense for a reader of a book.
It's very difficult, right? I mean, you have all this knowledge. I think what makes sense, you should have a clear process for what you do, especially if it's a how-to book. With Virtual Summit Mastery, I had the 7 steps. So it was easier, but still, you have to flesh it out. I also had like a 16,000, 20,000 word guide on the site. Of course, that helped Jan a little bit with the process. He didn't use that word for word. He changed it quite a bit to make sure it fit for the book, because it's a much broader audience on Amazon, for example, if they would find the book. So he changed it a little bit. So maybe they don't even know what a virtual summit is. I think you use virtual event more even in the book than virtual summit as the word, because virtual event is a broader, more searched word than just virtual summit. So you can keep that in mind a little bit depending on what you're doing. But I think it's still a great authority piece if you want to get speaking gigs and stuff like that for what you do. Just having a book out there is like a business card. It's not to get rich or something like that, although there are many books that make people pretty wealthy. It's still for what you want to do, probably, especially if you're starting or you've been running your business for a little while. It's just to have something out there that people can find and they can actually consume that you've created. You can also have an audiobook version of this.
Yeah.
And there's many AI tools when it comes to this stuff. Imagine how much you can repurpose from a book too. I think that's another thing not to be overlooked. AI tools can really help you repurpose this like crazy.
Yeah, absolutely. And they even help you just getting started. If you have never written a book and you think about, okay, I want to have a book out there, I get asked the same questions over and over again, and I'm tired of answering them. I just want to be able to point people to my book. Or as you said, use it as a door opener to get speaking gigs or something like that. Have a look at the Book Writing GPT, Book Writing Assistant GPT here inside ChatGPT, because you tell it what you want the book to be about, and it works you through a set of questions to craft a working title. And then from that working title, you come up with a structure. So it says, okay, whose problem am I solving? And it gives a suggested answer. What problem am I solving? What are the 3 reasons this is a problem? What are the 3 benefits I am unlocking? What promise am I making? What emotion am I generating? What's the next action my reader should take? And those are questions, when you take a step back and read through them, they are the component of every good email, every good sales page. Like, it's not rocket science, those questions, but they make a decent book go to a great book if you nail these questions.
Yeah. I think this is a good starting point for sure. Would you say this is how you did it with the Virtual Summit book, or you did it a little bit differently? Of course, ChatGPT was not available back then, but did you do a similar process, or did you just follow the structure basically? Because I already had the structure. Or this is what you would do for a new book, for example?
Yeah, for a new book, I would follow something like this. I can also show 2 other tools in a second. For my book, Virtual Summit Mastery Method, I followed a similar approach because the meat of the book was, of course, the 7-step process, but that's in the middle of the book. You still need the introduction, the opening, and you still need an ending. And in that part, you need to be really sure about, okay, I'm writing for this type of audience and I want to invoke this emotion in order to keep them reading and not put down the book after the 3rd page. Yeah. So it was a similar thought process, but having these kind of AI tools would have made it a lot faster, even though I wrote it in like 7 days.
You did it super fast. I remember this. Yeah. You had a challenge. I think you were one of the fastest ones to do it with Jasper back then. That was
it was an official challenge with Jasper back then, I think.
Yeah, it was.
I'm just walking you through this process right here with the Book Writing Assistant. And this is kind of like being interviewed, right? It's like the AI is asking me questions about what it thinks should go into my book. And then I can come back at it with feedback and say, okay, I want this angle to be a little bit different. I want that angle to be a little bit different.
The tricky part with this, I would say, is that you're using primarily the AI to create the content still. I think this would not pass as your own copyright. That's the tricky part. Especially if it's for example, you can never go with this book to a publisher. That will never work. Like, that's also something to keep in mind. If you just self-publish, that's fine, 100%. You don't have to worry too much. And I don't think anyone would just go and, I mean, it happens for sure that people copy books and stuff like that. But yeah, if they do that, fine. You don't have to like disclose you're using AI or something like that. You don't have to do it. I mean, if it's your knowledge, it's totally fine. It's like if you're using it for a blog post. But I would be a little bit careful with this process if you really want to own it 100% and actually be able to claim it in case someone copies this and publish the same book on Amazon. If they do that and you have used AI, you cannot technically claim that, like, if you go to court with this, they will actually, you cannot lie in court to say that you have actually not used AI. You need to actually say that you have used AI, and most likely you're not going to win this in that case. I mean, I'm
Right.
not a lawyer, but that's what I can assume based on what Peter shared about all this kind of stuff.
Yeah, I 100% agree with you. And here's one of the gripes that I have with ChatGPT in this process. I probably would not dive much further into this book writing assistant than outlining the chapters and having the structure in place, because the meat of the chapters has to be from your own knowledge, and you would never upload proprietary knowledge into a random GPT.
Yeah, 100%. This is so important, but I think we are going to get into that. The best is to use the AI as an assistant like this. Yeah, you can write every chapter with the AI too. You can do it for sure. But then is it really your knowledge? Yes, you can train it. You can upload stuff you want, and it can be for sure pretty decent. It can be good. But I would still get interviewed by someone to actually get like an hour interview. So many words. Like imagine I have 7 steps, 1 hour interview for each one. That's a lot of words, and that would actually be the book. Of course, a lot of editing goes into this, but you would have to edit anyway. So you would probably have to hire someone for the editing process of your book anyway and write it. If you want to have a ghostwriter, you can have a ghostwriter too to actually take your words to put it into something that makes sense if you don't want to do it yourself. Because of course, rewriting how you speak to a book form still takes a little bit of work. It's not to be looked down at. It takes time, but it's still a lot easier than you start from scratch on a blank page. I think that's how I would do all the books. And people who work with authors, they actually do it in this way. They usually interview them, and that's how they publish their books and get it out there a lot faster.
Yeah, I agree. And what I would do is, if you are bound on using ChatGPT, and we'll show Chat with PDF and Perplexity as alternatives, I would create my own custom GPT. We'll link up this instruction below. So it says, this is the book title, Smart Staffing. That's the title from the Book Writing Assistant we just got.
Yeah.
Description, this GPT contains research and draft content to help me write my book. The chapter outline we just got. References for sources, the capabilities defined for the GPT, and then a little bit of tone instruction and a little bit of formatting instruction. And then what I can do here is I can upload my knowledge to this one. So I can say, okay, we'll have this PDF, and we'll have this PDF, and we'll have some random PDFs in here. But I don't need DALL-E in here. I'm not using the conversation data to improve the OpenAI models. And you can feed the transcripts of those interviews, for example, into the knowledge in this GPT so it can reference that. And then when I save this, I say publish to only me. So I'm not running the risk of somebody else extracting the data from this GPT. As I've shown in my AI for Creators session, it's quite easy to jailbreak GPTs. I'm not running that risk if I only share this with my own account. Nobody else has access to that.
Exactly.
So then I have my book writer AI, and I could say something like, help me outline the story arc for my book. And then it would go into the knowledge. It knows my book is about how entrepreneurs can use AI to build the ultimate team. It now pulls from my information. It pulls from, let's say, the transcripts of the interviews that you've done. And now you have your own knowledge in the context of AI. And I think at that point, because it's primarily my knowledge, I mean, you would still obviously need to tweak this and rewrite a little bit, run it through Grammarly and all those things. But I think now you have a better standing if it came to a copyright claim, because now it's on you. It's based on your knowledge.
It's so interesting. I love that you bring this up, Jan, because it's interesting still. I was like trying to push Peter on this one, because I was like, for example, with content at scale, you can like generate this and then you add your own input and all this kind of stuff, even if it's your knowledge in this case. I think it's tricky. Like if you're using AI primarily as the writing tool to get this done. But if you're like leaving it as that, this is of course not a book right now. A book probably is like, let's say 40, 50, 60,000 words, maybe even longer sometimes. Then of course, this is just an outline. You could flesh this out a little bit more probably and still get away with it, especially if your knowledge. Maybe you take more stuff from your interviews someone did with you or something like that. But then like an editor goes in there and primarily the most of the book is actually done by a human, then it's okay. Then you're going to own the copyright. But that's up to you to decide. Like if you're just going to self-publish something, as long as it's your knowledge is fine. No one is going to care probably. It's more like about you. Do you really want to own the right to this work or not? I think that's something up to you to decide. Most people, of course, have published books with AI and they have made a lot of money. That's fine. I mean, you can do whatever suits you. But if it's for something that really is going to stand the test of time, I would probably own the copyright to it. That's just me.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with that. And a funny thought I just had is if I use a local AI model, like you can download LLMs to your own machine and train them to be an author or an editor and tweak the words. Yeah. Nobody would be able to tell because it's local. Doesn't have like a fingerprint or something, doesn't have like any traces of AI, if you would say. So if you could say, I've written this on my machine, because it is in a Word document or whatever on your machine, nobody would tell that. You can show that it is not a conversation you had inside ChatGPT or whatever. So it's tons of different things.
It's interesting, but either way, you can get a lot of help with AI, as you see here.
Yeah.
I think that's the important, even when we do courses and stuff like that, which we have other sessions on, we use a similar process with the outlining and stuff like that. I think that's where you can take away from it. Like the outlining, we always almost, like even for sessions like this, we sometimes use AI to just flesh it out quickly, and then we customize it based on, maybe they don't get everything right, but then we can actually get more of the points we want to talk about. But it's still a lot faster. I think it is. You have your little assistant to help you in any way in your business.
Yeah. And another tool I want to highlight about specifically about AI as assistants is Perplexity. Perplexity is a wrapper around multiple AI models. They have their own and they give you access to GPT-4, Claude, and their own. I think they dropped Gemini Pro now that Gemini Pro is out. I don't see it anymore at least. But you can have collections in there. So one thing you have to be very aware of if you're writing a book is you will compile boatloads of contextual information. There will be tons of facts, numbers, historical references, maybe things that you need to refer to in order to back claims that you're making in the book, for example. And what you can do is you create a collection for this inside Perplexity, give it the same prompt as I've just given for the custom GPT. And here you can upload the information itself as well and say, help me integrate the research from the attached PDF into a chapter of my book that talks about hiring challenges and lack of labor. Then it would do the same thing. The Copilot is active right now. I love the Copilot at Perplexity. There's only Pro plan that has it. But essentially it now lets me dive deeper into what it is that I want to get out of this prompt. So I want to have the AI impact on hiring and how managers see AI. Also skip this if you wanted to. But then based on my response here, you can see it tweaks the research on the web a little bit. And it also references the file. And it now gives me a very detailed answer. And I find that even though it uses GPT-4, or you can set it to GPT-4, I find that with this Copilot, the answers are way more relevant than inside ChatGPT. It's way better structured, and you can rewrite this at any point in time. So this is, I'm not sure if I can, it doesn't show anymore what this was written with, but you can see it's only their own model, Claude and GPT. But I can now rewrite this with a different model to see what the output looks like.
Could you upload like audio somewhere as well? Like, let's say you have audio files or like video files. I mean, I guess you could get similar to what we have done before. You can like summarize this or get the takeaways or whatever. I mean, I think maybe it would be easier to just get a transcript, to be
Yeah,
honest, for especially for book
transcript works
writing.
really well.
Yeah, otherwise they might miss stuff, right? I mean, it's still
Yeah.
this is the interesting part. I mean, I would be interested to see how Google's AI perform with Gemini or Gemini Pro. I think that would be really, really interesting to see because they have 1 million token limit. That's crazy, right? Imagine that would be perfect for writing a book. But I think, as we have seen, when a lot of stuff is released, that's just like basically like being the best. They say this. That's like it looks good on the stats, but then is it really gonna be that good in the beginning? I don't know. We'll see how it is because if it is really working, it would be fantastic with really long form content. I mean, that's what it is for. But I think we'll miss
Yeah.
stuff still. I think that's how it's gonna be in the beginning.
Yeah, I think so too. The AI researchers that I'm speaking to, they all agree that this lost in the middle problem still isn't solved, and AI still has struggles with retrieving all the information from a given set of data, which is also important to say. I'm glad you're bringing this up because this again shows that AI can only be an assistant in the writing process.
I
AI
mean, this
cannot do the writing.
hallucination is crazy. I mean, Amar of Vectara is like a big proponent. He's speaking a lot about this stuff, and I think Vectara is really good on that. At that, but it's not a tool probably would use in your process as a creator necessarily. It's more for people building tools like you do, Jan, with SaaS. I think it's great for this. But yeah, that's kind of what they're trying to solve, the hallucination problem and all of this. But it's really interesting. I think we have tried this so much and it's almost always the case. The AI forgets stuff. Even the tools that say, oh, we're going to pull out the best quotes and here and this and that, they miss stuff and they are charging sometimes hundreds of dollars a month for this and it's missing stuff in the middle and it's one of their core features. So yeah, it's a really important aspect to this. And here you see, of course,
This is Gemini, you know?
Yeah.
And I'm just uploading. Here's the kicker. You cannot even upload files to Gemini. I think I might not be on the
but
pro
you
plan.
need, they have a paid, do they have a paid plan now, right?
Yeah, they do. I don't think I'm on that yet.
Yeah.
Because it's literally just rolled out a couple of days.
Got rolled out when we were doing this session. Yeah.
Research how AI impacts hiring, but it's still good to show and build a story arc for my book. I think when it comes to book writing, you have to think about the different steps that you have to go through, right? So you need to decide about, okay, what is the topic that I want to write about? Who is the book for? What are the benefits I want to cover? What are the action steps I want people to take? What's the next step after reading the book? Then you have kind of like the storyline format. And I love how Plottr does this, by the way, sponsor of the AI for Creators Summit, plottr.com. They don't have AI yet in their tool, but I love how they visualize the different chapters and the character development and the different elements of a book. Even if you're writing a nonfiction book, you have to guide people through the book. You need to hook them time and time again so that they keep reading and always have a little bit of teasers and cliffhangers and still give them enough to keep reading. And with that, I think AI can be extremely useful.
Yeah, for sure. And I think a tool like this can be good if you're not really familiar with how you would do the process. If you have a lot of content like I had for Virtual Summit Mastery, it's pretty easy to write a book around it. But still, as Jan mentioned before, you still need the introduction, you still need the ending, you need these kind of cliffhangers at the end of chapters, maybe some action steps. You've probably done this in one shape or form if you have a lot of content out there. Even like really big authors, like I remember back in the day, like Michael Hyatt's first book Platform. He took that from his blog. That was his blog post basically compiled into a book. So you can repurpose a lot of your existing content. Maybe you have a really good course, or which I've seen students do before for VSM. They have basically taken their content and put it into a book form. I probably wouldn't do that with AI for creators. I mean, although I could do because AI is changing so fast. But I mean, could still be a book about AI for creators. I mean, it could be a great book with resources and stuff and make it as evergreen as possible, or for list building. I've done summits on this. That could turn into a book based on the summit sessions with strategists on how to grow their email list. I think it doesn't need to be that overwhelming to write a book. And if you have all this content with the videos, for example, it becomes easier. We talk about this so much. That's why personally, I know Jan starts usually with writing, which is totally fine, but I started a lot with the video process, because then I have the content already, and then I get the transcripts, I have the written form already, and that's how I do it.
Yeah. And here's something cool that my friend Matthew Turner does a lot. He writes his book as Fables.
Yeah.
So what you can do is just invent a fictional character that you walk through your process together with, and you position a guide alongside the journey that knows your process and teaches people through the process, and you show the character development inside the book. And that is pretty cool. I think Build to Sell from John Barlow also has this format. It's about an agency owner who hates his life being an agency owner. He goes to this really wealthy friend he had who sold multiple businesses, and he says to his friend, I want to sell my agency. And they go through some numbers and they think about, okay, do you have specific set of processes? Do you have recurring revenue? What are you known for? Blah, blah, blah. And he says, okay, your agency is essentially worthless. And then the friend mentors this agency owner throughout the book, guiding him through restructuring the agency. And by the end of the book, the agency is a super well-oiled machine. He sells for like 7 figures and up. But that's a good structure that you can take for a nonfiction book and still weave a little bit of storytelling into it, because what that does is it makes it easy for the reader to put themselves in the shoes of the character that is going through the process in the book. That's one thing I would change if I would write another book. One mistake that I've made with the Virtual Summit Mastery method is not to use this fable format.
Very interesting. I think that's for sure important. Another thing, we haven't really talked about this too much, because here's the deal. You might have some content, but still you might want to fill it out. And fill it out with fluff is not good, but you might have successful students. I think I have a lot of them for Virtual Summit Mastery, and I could take the case studies. I have videos, even if they are just a few, like 7 minutes long, 10 minutes long. I have some videos that are longer as well. You can weave in a lot of these stories into the book, because stories sell. Like, that's the key here. So you can basically get into stories in each chapter when you talk about, let's say, how to come up with your Virtual Summit topic in this case. Then I would like, okay, someone who struggled with this, then I would bring in their story into that, how they actually came up with their topic. And yeah, of course, I can tell my own story as well. And I'm sure I do that within the book. That's also important. But weaving in your students or your clients inside a book, really powerful. And that's going to basically lead people, especially if it's a how-to book, because you want them to take the next step. What is the next step? Probably getting into some premium course, maybe becoming your client, booking a call, signing up for, like, let's say, the resource for the book, so they get onto your email list so you can communicate with them further. All of this kind of stuff is important. And I think by weaving in the stories, you're going to do a better job at that.
Yeah, and it's not just about weaving in stories. You can see right here, I'm following one of Perplexity's suggested next questions. What are some examples of AI being used in the hiring process? And it comes up with references to different tools and things like that. So what you can do in a book is reach out to the people building these tools and ask them if they want to contribute an interview or a statement or a quote or something like that.
Yeah. No, so powerful. Love this tip. I think this is good. And also what you can add to a book, especially if it's a more technical book, like in this case with AI and stuff, you can have a glossary. Maybe you are not writing for the most advanced people. I would even have that for the Virtual Summit book. I don't think you had that for VSM. I'm not sure. But
no, I didn't.
I think if you had the time, I would have a glossary, especially if I would do it today. I would have a glossary for any how-to book that is like a little bit complex about list building or funnels or anything like that. I would put the glossary there, or even if it's about health or anything like this. And maybe you have your unique process. You can have words that you explain and you have that towards the end. I think that's powerful. Maybe you can explain certain things with the AI helping you, but you should probably, I wouldn't use AI too much for every single thing in the book. That's also why AI is an assistant. It's not a replacement for your own creativity and how you would actually structure the book.
Right. I agree. And coming back to structuring the book, I think what we should also talk about is what the actual writing of a book looks like. Yeah. So I think Perplexity is the best AI platform for doing research, because also you can group collections, and you can group the conversations into collections and name them and search through them properly and things like that.
And
You can
that's on the
compare
Pro plan, right, Jan?
Yeah, yeah.
And what
That's
does
the
that
Pro.
cost usually? Is that similar to ChatGPT, right?
Yeah, that's $20 a month.
I wish they came together, kind of ChatGPT and Perplexity. I think I would love to see GPTs within Perplexity. I think that would be really useful. I mentioned this before. I think they have features that are good on ChatGPT and they have really good feature on Perplexity. But I do lean towards Perplexity a little bit more for certain things. I think it's really, really good.
Yeah, I agree. And what's cool is when you get your referral link, Navid, and you can set this up, I guess, you get everybody using that link gets 10% off. So the barrier to trying is pretty low, I would say. So I would do the research and compiling the information inside Perplexity. I would probably still write most of the time inside ChatGPT because ChatGPT's back and forth, I feel, is a bit more natural than Perplexity. So what I would do is please suggest 3 outlines for the first chapter, opening the book. Then this goes into a very similar process that we've shown a couple of times when it comes to creating content with AI. You go from broad to narrow, and you start with this high-level view of give me an outline, and then you go back and forth on the outline to make sure it's really good and it's the way you want it to. And you probably want to avoid any copyright issues. You only want to use the outlines that AI gives you if you agree with them. And then you want to write them, maybe record yourself talking the book, following the outline, but do not write the full content inside ChatGPT. I would probably, similar to you, I would just record myself speaking into the microphone, speaking through the outline, and then turning that into written form.
You can do voice memos on your smartphone, for example. That could be one way if you don't have someone to interview. I think still it's the easiest to get interviewed because then you have a set of questions and you're basically going through the questions. When you're just speaking, it's easy to forget stuff, although you can still have the questions written down, of course. You can do it. I just think it's more engaging to do it this way, and that's probably my process for doing a book. But again, if you don't have anyone, I think that's the best way to do it.
Yeah. What you can also do is you can cheat a little bit here and you can say, have AI interview you. And then you can speak those answers into the note on your phone or something like that.
You can transcribe it after. I mean, you can use Happy Scribe or even Descript, which you have used before a lot, depending on what you use. But yeah, if you just want a transcription tool, a lot of them do it automatically these days. So it will not be too complicated to get that.
Yeah, but this is the approach that I would probably do. I would sort through the data inside Perplexity, or what I also wanted to show is Chat with PDF. That's just a wrapper around OpenAI. You can upload on the premium plan, which I am not on. You can upload, I think, up to 3,000 pages.
There's another one by the founder of testimonial.ai. Is it .to, I think? I think they have a PDF.ai tool as well. I think it's still doing quite well. I think
Damon Chan, I think, yeah.
Damon Chan, he has that tool. I mean, he builds pretty basic tools, but it's for it's not that complicated to do it. But I think if you just want to use a tool like that, it's great. But they have also some GPTs and stuff like that, so you might not need it. That's why you have to see what gives you the best output. Sometimes the GPT that you like doesn't work, and you have to go to the next one. That's kind of what we have seen for sure.
Yeah, this is another good tool. And the reason to use this is if you really upload proprietary knowledge somewhere. If you really want to use OpenAI, use the OpenAI API, which says you have to use a wrapper. You cannot use OpenAI yourself because the API is GDPR compliant and it clearly says in the terms that it is not going anywhere. It's encrypted all the way through. Whereas even if you build your own GPT, like I've done right here, and even if we go to edit GPT and say we are not using conversation data to improve the models, there's nothing in the terms I've seen that says, okay, this is really private information. So I would still be cautious with
100%. And this comes down to, we have talked about this a lot in other sessions, but it's the open versus closed systems. I think this is supposed to be a closed system now because he unticked this box, but it's still anything with ChatGPT, I consider open system, to be honest. Train the model, whatever you, or you might be breached or whatever. I'm not trusting this 100%, and that might get better in the future for sure. But it's so many users, I would still like be a little bit wary of this. This is like so many millions and millions of people using this, right? But when it comes to these other tools we have mentioned, you upload your knowledge, like a knowledge base kind of. I think that's great. I mean, you can even have, yes, it's not really relevant for writing your book as much, but like if you wanted to have a little assistant to your book that your customers or your readers can get access to, maybe using Coachvox or Searchy for this and uploading this book into that platform, really powerful, because then you could maybe even upsell people to this little thing or give it as a bonus when they buy the book during launch or something like that. This I haven't seen a lot of authors do yet. I don't know if about you, Jan, but I think
I've seen nobody doing that.
Yeah, I mean, I'm surprised that Alex Hormozy and people like that are doing crazy launches for the book. I mean, AI was out. They didn't like do that. Imagine like being able to get access to Alex Hormozy's brain, basically, but in a chat format. Super powerful. I mean, he could charge for this. Alex, if you're ever listening to this, you should do
it. You could even build this yourself with all the content he has on YouTube. Just download all the
and people have done it. There's GPTs about Alex Hormozy, I think. So and about Huberman and these people. But that's kind of their information. You should not. I mean, it's kind of like stealing their information.
Don't monetize it, at least. If you want to use something,
I would not even do it. To be honest, I would not take, because they're basically taking all their knowledge and building GPTs. That's questionable if you should do that, but people do it, and it's fine. Right. So that's a side note. But these tools and Grammarly we have here, that's a powerful one.
Grammarly is important for editing because we've covered the research, we've covered the writing or the speaking of your book rather. I think then the next step would be you run this through Grammarly, you install it on your computer, and it integrates with Word and Google Docs and all those platforms that you might use to write your book. Yeah. And this is a really good AI to simplify how you speak and how you write.
They also have now generative AI features more, not just like rewrite a sentence and stuff like that, but actually I think you have an assistant, so they can actually write more, like they can actually generate content, which was not the case before. Of course, Grammarly, I think is one of the oldest AI tools. I mean, it has been around for almost as long as I've been online, I think, which is kind of crazy. I don't know if it was around when I started, but for sure in the early days it came, and it has had AI for the longest time in terms of like updating like grammar and stuff like that. Now you can generate, passive tone and all this kind of stuff. And
this is pretty cool here.
Yeah, I mean, but I think the newer stuff is like the generative AI, really, that you can rewrite stuff and you can make it a lot better. I think even more than before.
Yeah,
and that's what you see here.
This is pretty cool, and I might even have a lifetime deal from AppSumo for Grammarly flying around somewhere. But you can see all the different tools it integrates with. So this is pretty cool. And here's the most important point right there. You own what you write. So this is why we have no problem recommending Grammarly for the editing process.
Because it's mostly like you're editing your work. It's not like you're creating an entire piece of the entire work with Grammarly here. I mean, at least that's what I wouldn't use it for this. That's not what people use it for. It's mostly to fix stuff, to rewrite stuff, and then you're actually getting a little bit help instead of having only an editor. Even an editor should use this basically and help them out. So I think this amplifies your editor or your team, if you have them on board, to have a tool like it, Grammarly.
Yeah, I agree. And then when I think about my publishing process for the book back in the day, one critical component that I couldn't execute too much because I just had 7 days is the launch of the book and the preparation for that. So you've alluded to it a little bit earlier with the GPT and uploading your book into Coachvox or something like that. But what you can also do, of course, is you can simply ask ChatGPT, help me create a launch plan for my book about AI and hiring processes. Ask me 4 questions so you can craft a compelling and highly converting launch plan. And then this is the regular process where you turn AI into an interviewer, and instead of you telling the AI what the launch plan should be about, you have the AI ask you questions about the book, about the value proposition. You can see right here, what are the goals, what resources do you have available, and you just work through that process. You give it the timeline, you give it the audience, you give it every information it needs to know, and then the AI helps you create a good launch plan for that.
Yeah, it's a similar process you would actually go through if you, let's say you had a team meeting and we will go on Zoom or something like that. We will discuss this. It's a similar process we would actually go through. But here, instead of actually having someone working for you, maybe you're just starting out as a solopreneur. You don't have a team. You don't have someone to discuss this with. Well, you have the AI to talk this through. Of course, you have to see, okay, does it make sense what the AI says? But here, you're just having a conversation, and the AI is going to guide you through it. I think that's one of the best way to actually use AI tools, and especially ChatGPT.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And there are so many different ways you can launch a book depending on the market that you're in and the resources you have available, that I think it's just good. If you can afford it, I would probably, and if you're really serious about the book, hire somebody who has done this before and who can guide you through the process and who has connections to the press and media outlets and things like that. But if it's a self-publishing book and you're not trying to be a Wall Street Journal best-selling author, I think this is a really good process because it shortcuts the learning curve for you. If you don't have people lined up and on the day when you hit publish and the book goes live, you won't see any sales.
Yeah, so the thing is, like, you can actually become a Wall Street Journal bestseller with just a self-published book. It's not as common, but New York Times bestseller is very difficult as a self-published author to become. Usually it's when you have a publisher. But I think with becoming a #1 Amazon bestseller in your category, very doable. Even like the Virtual Summit book Jan published, and he didn't have like a huge audience or something like that for this that hit the bestseller list. And it's not like this wow thing. It's not that complicated to do it. If you launch it like for 99 cents, or some people even launch it free sometimes, but I like 99 cents. I would still get buyers. I think it's good to maybe 99 cents. I think would be a good way to do it if you wanted a lot of people, and then you can increase the price slightly for the book. And if you have an email list, that's what I would probably go for. They would be your, what do you call it? Like you have your launch, basically your book launch team members or something. That's kind of what people do, right? They have their launch team essentially.
Yeah, it's kind of like back in the day, it was a Facebook group where you got people hyped up and got people excited about the launch.
People still do these. I think sometimes people still do these for launches. I mean, even for like all the affiliate launches, I'm a member of many groups. They still have these. It's not as much before because Facebook is very noisy and people don't like this as much anymore, but they still use them. And I think it's powerful to gather people. I mean, Alex Hormozi, we mentioned him before for one of his launches for $100 million offers and $100 million leads. I think he had like, I mean, that was like crazy amount of affiliates. I don't know how many. It was like tens of, I don't know, for sure, tens of thousands maybe.
It was tens of thousands of.
Yeah, it was insane. I mean, of course, not every. It's like the 80-20, right? But still, I mean, I'm sure a lot of people spread the word, and he had some gifts and swag and whatever. So people felt excited to share it. This is a very expensive book launch. If you just want to hit like a bestseller and make it as an authority piece for your business, and it's your first book, and you don't have this kind of money behind it, just do a simple launch with your email list or something like that. And I think it's difficult to start with a book and you don't have a list. I think that's important to note. Like, what kind of audience will you pull from? You need an audience somewhere for the book. So I would not really publish a book as the first thing unless I actually have the audience, because like a virtual summit, for example, and I'm a big fan of this, obviously, is something that will build your audience far more than just a book will. And then you will struggle more to actually get the book out there. Plus, the book doesn't really make that much money. So it's like you're spending all this time for what? Like if you're starting out. So that's what I would say.
Yeah, absolutely agree. And what you've seen right here is it gave me now a 3-phase launch plan with a teaser campaign, cover reveal, countdown series, launch week, and then the post-launch momentum, so that you get into the building the thought leadership with the weekly email series and things like that. And I've given it some feedback here because 3 weeks seems not remotely enough to get people excited. So I told it, okay, let's do a 12-week timeline.
Yeah, I think for a book, the interesting part is you need a little more time to get people hyped up. You see, for these big launches, I mean, you are not going for, let's say, the New York Times. Like Ali Abdaal just published his book, The Feel Good Productivity. he was talking about this book like a long time, like half a year before it even came out, even longer.
Same
Like
with Noah, yeah.
Noah Kagan as well. Like they were talking about it. They were actually Ali Abdallah even more. He was involving people in the book writing process. I think that's
Yeah.
something you can do if you have an audience, to involve people on the journey. Hey, I'm writing this chapter now. I mean, and you want to read a draft of this chapter, you can even involve people on this and get feedback. I think that's really powerful, especially if you're a newer creator and you don't have this massive audience. Even bigger creators do it, like Ali Abdal, like involving people on the journey on his YouTube channel, sharing videos about writing his book. Very powerful, underrated.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more with this. And this is where AI comes in handy quite a bit, because you can tell the AI, okay, I've got these different channels I can communicate with my audience, or maybe I have no audience whatsoever, I'm just starting. Then, as you said, maybe writing a book isn't the smartest way to go into a market, but if you still want to write the book, AI will give you ideas how to find the audience and how to engage with them.
Yeah, I mean, some people might have a book as a passion project as well. Chandler Bolt talks about this quite a bit. Some people want to write books just because they have this as a life goal. That's fine.
Yeah.
You might not need it as this massive piece. Can still turn into something big that it turns into a business. But if it's just something you want to do, by all means, go for it. But if it's like, hey, I'm going to actually grow my email list, I'm going to do all these things, and it's actually your first thing you do, it better be a really good piece, a really good book and like revolutionary in some way. And then you can probably reach a lot of people, because good stuff usually gets out there in some way. Like if it's really good, and there's for sure people who have started with a book, like Tim Ferriss. He was not really famous when he wrote the 4-Hour Workweek. For sure not. He had some business success, but he didn't have like this massive personal brand. But then he went on all these podcasts. So what you would do if you don't have an audience, then he would actually reach out to all these bloggers. Actually, he went to bloggers back then. That was not so many podcasts around. He went to all these blogs and he got featured because it was a new concept that he was teaching. So you can get on all these health blogs if you're writing about this, or mindfulness blogs if you're writing about something. Or in Jan's case, he would try to go on all these kind of techie AI podcasts and speak about the book there, or speak about the concepts in his book rather. And that would drive quite some people to his new email list about AI in that case. I think that's how I would do it if I have a very small audience.
That's even what the big shots do. I've seen Noah Kagan say that he's been on an interview tour for 18 months prior to the book launch. So you just have to invest the time, I guess. And that's also where having a strong network comes into play. So whenever you go onto a podcast, you always ask for referrals and say, okay, who else should I speak with that has a podcast who I would be a good guest for?
But it's important when it comes to this, Lewis Howes talks about this quite a bit, that you don't ask for anything for a long time, but when you need it, you can actually ask for your shots, basically. So that's what it's about. You're helping people all this other time when you're not having a launch, like when you're not having a summit even, like anything. You're helping other people. And then when your things comes up that it's really important to you that it does well, then you can ask for help, or you can ask for go on the podcast. You can say, hey, I have this amazing book coming out. Would you like to interview me for this? Most people are going to say yes to this request if you have helped them enough in the process. And of course, you need to have good content and all of this. But if we assume you have great content, other people will probably want to share that content. But if you haven't helped anyone else, even though your content might be good, it's not always like, hey, I'm just going to get you on here, yes, with short notice. Not going to happen sometimes. So that's what I would do. And that's, you can compile even like lists of podcasts and different things. You can get help with AI with some of this, but rather going to Apple Podcasts and stuff like this, you can like find a lot of this stuff usually. But AI can for sure help with some of this. And this is by Rachel Miller. This was really popular on the AI for Creators. So that's why we want to show this. We'll link this up in the description here as well and below the video.
Yeah, I'm really excited to test this out myself when I've got a little bit more time on my hands, because what you can do is to spice up the book launch. People often give bonuses for the people who pre-order, for example. So what you can do is you use AI. We've got the video on creating mini offers and mini courses and things like that. You can also use tools like Bizzy, where you can create digital products using AI. And if they complement your book, they will be really good for pushing people over the fence who are not yet ready.
So good. This is like, you can create resources, checklists, anything. This is also nice design. If you're not a designer, it's going to do it instantly. You just have a bit of, you answer a few questions, basically. That's what you do in there. And then you're getting the output basically as a checklist, or you can have it as a lead magnet as well. It can be anything, but it's really, really useful, to be honest.
These
And
look really good.
yeah, they are good. I mean, this tool is actually really good for anyone to get in there. You get the design, everything ready. You can tweak things as you wish. You can add your brand colors. It's a great tool. I think it's handy for sure. And it's pretty affordable for what it can do.
Yeah. I think that's a good way to wrap up the author secrets, Navid. If I were to summarize my experience from 2022 to now, I would mix more tools together. I would go into research with Perplexity. I would create the story arc and the outline in ChatGPT in a custom GPT. I would speak the book and use the transcriptions as the content for Grammarly to clean it up, following the outline from ChatGPT. I will probably use Bizzy to create promotional resources and bonuses.
Yeah.
And then I would go on a heavy podcast campaign. So probably needs like 6 to 12 months of planning, and so that you get onto the calendar and onto the schedule with those podcasts before the book would actually be out.
If you wanted to make a big splash, I think the podcast tour is great. I think especially if you can reach some bigger podcasts as well. But even the smaller ones, as a small creator, I think this underrated. You're getting backlinks also to your site and stuff like that. And what you mentioned with Bizzy or creating these resources, I think what Jan refers to here, you can have it as a launch resource, like as a bonus for the book. But like inside the book, let's say they go in Amazon, they're buying your book randomly. Basically, you can have, let's say, aiforcreators.com/resources or whatever, like creatorschool.ai/resources, whatever, a resource book or something. And you go there and they can enter their email address. I think that is the key. You're building your email list with your book in that case, and then you deliver the resources, because otherwise you don't own the customer. It's Amazon basically, or wherever they buy the book. It's not usually on your website. Of course, you can set up a Shopify or whatever. You can sell your book yourself, but most likely most people are going to buy your book off Amazon, or if you have it published, it will be in bookstores or Barnes and Noble or whatever they buy books. But you can have resources and they can actually download this, and then you build your list from it. I think that's powerful. So that's what I would say here. I hope you found this valuable. And if you have any questions or takeaways from this session, leave it in the comments below. We will link up some resources. We have mentioned quite a few here, different tools we use in the process. Try it out. I mean, this is the process we would use if you're writing a book. And this is not replacing our brain or anything like that. This is actually using AI as an assistant in the book writing process. And I think then it will be a much better quality of work as well. So with that being said, I'll see you in the next session. Ciao for now. Bye.